culprit in the question of opioid addiction isn't the drug companies or Congress, but instead it is the system itself. It's capitalism. Dr. Maté joins us tonight. Doctor, thanks a lot for coming on. So we're doing a series for a week on this question, and I wanted to get at least one night with an alternative voice in here because I want to remain open-minded. And as I understand it, your contention is that drugs and alcohol, even heroin, are not inherently addictive, but they only become a problem because of the society in which they're used?
No, that's not exactly what I say, but thank you for having me, first of all, and thanks for doing this series. What I'm saying is that all drug use, and particularly opiate drug use, is about people soothing pain. These are powerful painkillers. And as a palliative care physician, for example, I was very happy to prescribe opiates to people as a way of easing their suffering.
Yes.
But these drugs don't only soothe physical pain, they also soothe emotional pain. And what I'm saying about addictions of all kinds is that they're rooted, first of all, in emotional pain, and particularly in trauma. And so the question is, what conditions traumatize people? And what conditions traumatize people are family violence, multi-generational trauma history, abusive situations in childhood, but also extraordinary stress on the parents, which leaves the children without emotional support. And as a result of what's happening in our society right now, both in your country, the US, and my country, Canada, a lot more people are getting addicted. So heroin use, as you know, in your country, has gone up 5-fold in the last 10 years.
Yes, and I think some of what you're saying is true.
It's not because the drugs are inherently addictive, but because so much more people are in pain. That's my point.
Let me ask you this question, however. If you flood a community with a physically addictive substance, and opioids, I don't think anyone disputes, are physically addictive, as is alcohol, as you know, then you're more likely to have a higher percentage of them become addicted, which is to say, if heroin or its synthetic substitutes are really cheap, why wouldn't you have more heroin addicts? Doesn't that make sense?
Well, as an American judge said very astutely, that you can no more repeal the law of supply-demand than you can repeal the law of gravity. The question is, why are so many people in so much emotional pain that they gravitate towards those solutions? And not just drugs, by the way, but also alcohol. This is killing people as well. Cigarettes are killing people much more lethally, by the way, than the opiates are. So people are addicted to gambling, to shopping, to eating, to sex. There's obesity, there's diabetes. These are all addictive patterns rooted in emotional pain and trauma. And if we want to deal with the question of addiction, we have to ask, what is it that's traumatizing so many people? Now, last night in your very excellent series, you talked about, was it the night before, about a county in Kentucky, one of the poorest counties in that state, where there's a lot of opiate addiction. Don't you think the poverty and the loss of jobs and the loss of hope and the loss of connection and the destruction of communities has a lot to do with why people are in pain?
Of course I do. Of course I do. And it's self-evident that that's true. I guess here's the point that I would dispute that you just made. And I think a lot of what you said is true. But not all addictions are the same in their effects, and there's a weird kind of relativism that would argue they are. So smoking is clearly bad for your health, but it doesn't cause you to neglect your children or lose your job or beat your wife, whereas other kinds of addictions do. And so if we can't...
No, they don't.
Well, of course, heroin is a threat to an imminent threat to your life. It can make you incapable of going to work. Of course it does.
No, actually, in Vancouver, let me tell you a fact. In international studies in Germany, in Switzerland, in the UK, and in Canada, we've actually had clinics that prescribe heroin to confirmed addicts. They hold on jobs. They're good with their families. And they don't break the law. So that what creates the problem with heroin addiction is mostly the arbitrary laws that say that it's not okay to use heroin, but it's okay to kill yourself with cigarettes. And by the way, alcohol, as you know, causes a lot of violence, much more than heroin does.
Well, you're not going to hear me defending alcohol. You're not going to hear me defending alcohol ever. But I think that's there's a lot wrong, I think, with that comparison, but unfortunately we're out of time. But I appreciate your bringing up the topic because I think it's more complex than a lot of us can see. Doctor, thanks for coming on tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Up next, Fox's